Hi, so to begin with, let me just introduce myself. I'm a 35-year-old married woman. My husband's 37 years old. We've been together for 7 years and we have been married for 5 years. We don't have any marital issues. We're pretty much on the same page about everything. And the only issues that we do have are the ones that I have with his family. So here's the deal. I'm a working woman, and since my 20s, I had made up my mind already that I did not want children. Nothing against them personally. I think they are wonderful, but I just don't think that it's my cup of tea. We had discussed this, and Nathan was on the same page. He did not want children either. He also knows for a fact that I'm not a very good cook. I can only make very basic stuff, so he does most of the cooking while I handle other chores. That's how things work in our home, and I think it's completely fine. But unfortunately, right from the time that we have been dating, his parents have never been able to come on board with how things are with us. They have always tried to impose their own beliefs and traditions on us, and it has never worked. It has only made me like them a little less. But they have not been able to change my mind about anything, because I personally believe that whatever works for us, and we don't have to stick to any strict gender roles or whatever. I understand that they had different beliefs in their time, but we are from a different generation, and I don't think that we have to do exactly whatever they did to make our marriage work. On several occasions, my in-laws, my father-in-law particularly, has tried to nudge me the right direction and has dropped hints that he wants me to do the cooking around the house and also the other chores, and he wants me to cut down on my working hours so I can focus more on whatever's going on at home. And both he and his wife have always heavily wished and made it clear that they are not happy with our decision of not having kids. But so far, we have always been able to maintain a peaceful relationship with them. We have been able to overlook all of this. Neither me nor my husband are particularly confrontational people, and even though we don't like the fact that his parents keep trying to impose their beliefs on us, we try to look past it because other than that, we don't really have any problems with them as such, and we don't want to create problems or any sort of drama. So that's why we have successfully managed to live our lives the way we want, without having to worry about them too much. Because at the end of the day, we know they can't really do anything about what we are doing except nag us a little. And we were fine with that, honestly. But then recently, we had decided to move in with the two of them for a couple of weeks, or maybe 2 months at most, because our house was getting renovated and that was when things went wrong. So right now, there is a lot of drama and I don't really know what to do or how to feel about any of this. Because of some internal structural damage that was giving us a lot of trouble, we decided to go through with the renovation on an emergency basis. And in the beginning, we had planned on staying in a hotel until this was all done. However, after speaking to his parents about it, my husband let me know that they were offering to let us stay with them because they had the spare guest room, and this way we wouldn't have to spend a ton of money on a hotel room either, which would be expensive and a little inconvenient too. We thought about it. The only problem that both of us saw with this situation was that we would have to live with his parents. And that meant that they would constantly be hovering around trying to tell us how to live our lives. So after a few days, we decided against it because it was just not going to be worth it. But then when my husband decided to communicate that decision to his parents, they were just not going to have it. They kept insisting that we must stay with them and that they were not going to allow us to spend a ton of money for no reason and inconvenience ourselves. And they said that they would be very happy to have us over and they really wanted us to do this for them. It was kind of sweet. So eventually we decided to move in with them, and for the first 2 weeks things were fine. But then a couple of days back, my father-in-law started bugging me about something very arbitrary. Obviously, they had already started nagging us about certain things. And they were trying to be subtle and gentle about it, but it was not working. And since they were letting us stay with them without rent, we were trying to be patient, but both my husband and I were getting mildly annoyed. It was the usual things they were expressing, subtly but clearly, that they wanted a grandchild. So I was already kind of agitated and trying to keep it under wraps, but my father-in-law really ticked me off. A couple of days back, he started dropping hints that he wanted me to wake up earlier and follow the same routine that my mother-in-law does and has since forever, which is obviously impossible for me because unlike my mother-in-law, I'm a working woman. I don't have that sort of time and energy. I'll tell you about my mother-in-law's routine. She wakes up at around 4 or 5 in the morning, and then she gets started with the household work. She starts prepping for all the meals during the day, like chopping up vegetables. Once she's done with that, she does the laundry. Then she does the cleaning and dusting around the house, since at that point in time, nobody's really awake, so it doesn't disturb anybody. By 7, she starts preparing breakfast for her husband. And nowadays, she's been doing it for us as well. So she's been waking up at 4 regularly. And then by 8, once everybody's up, she serves everyone. And then she cleans and sweeps all the bedrooms and makes all the beds. Then, after everyone's done, she has her own breakfast, and of course that's the rest of the day for all the other miscellaneous tasks and chores around the house. She goes to bed at around 11 after doing the dishes at night, and then once again wakes up at 4 the next day. Now, does anybody think that this is a feasible option for me as a working woman? Obviously not. And I'm not going to put myself through all of this. I'm not used to it. Neither did my mom do any of this, and so I'm not going to put myself through all of this unnecessary trouble. In fact, I have even told my mother-in-law that she doesn't need to wake up early to make breakfast for myself and my husband. Neither does she need to clean up after ourselves. We're not kids. We can pull our weight around the house. But she insists that she has to do it all on her own, and the cherry on top is that she has some back problems, so naturally it's not good for her to be doing so much work around the house. But my father-in-law insists that it keeps her in shape. It gives her the exercise that she needs. And that's why he refuses to hire any sort of household help, even though he can afford it. He doesn't seem to understand that given the condition of her body and her age, since she is in her mid-50s now, she needs rest and not more work. I have tried to explain it to them, especially my mother-in-law, but she just won't hear it. And they're stuck in their old ways and traditions, and my husband and I are just always so annoyed with this kind of thing. We try to prevent it, but if she doesn't want to be helped, then there's not much that we can do. Anyway, it was bad enough that she was having to do all of this, but then my father-in-law started insisting that I should wake up at the same time as her, or at least wake up by 5, and try to help her out. In the beginning, he was just dropping hints, but when he saw that I was not going to change my routine, he started guilt-tripping me, saying that my mother-in-law was having to do all of this on her own, and with more people in the house it was a little difficult to deal with, so she needed my help. And she was never going to ask for it, so he was telling me to try and help her out in this situation. He was trying to make it seem like he was doing his wife a favor by asking me to help out and wake up and do all the work that she was doing, and I could see through whatever he was trying to do very clearly. He couldn't have been more transparent if he tried. It was obvious that he just wanted me to be a clone of his wife, so that his son would also have somebody to treat him like a child throughout his life, so that he would not have to do any work around the house at all, while I ended up doing everything. Whereas he just worked 9 to 5 on the weekdays, which would be practically nothing compared to the kind of work the woman would end up doing at home every single day for the rest of our lives. I mean, it sounded like a total nightmare, and the fact that he was insisting I follow this routine instead of just doing the normal thing and having everybody help out so that my mother-in-law could also get some well-needed and well-deserved rest, that was insane. Clearly his priority was not his wife. His priority was trying to show me my place, and the more he insisted on this, the more annoyed I got. I tried to argue with him, saying that instead of forcing me to wake up at an ungodly hour and split the work with my mother-in-law, then go on to do my own work as well, we could all chip in, including him, and that would make things much easier for everyone. That would also be much fairer. But he was not having it. He started saying that he was old and retired and he had done enough in his lifetime while running a company and now he deserved some rest. I found that very funny and very hypocritical, because here he was saying that he was too old to be helping out around the house. But he really didn't have any serious health problems that would prevent him from doing the lightweight work. And at the same time he was pretending to have sympathy for his wife, but wouldn't lift a finger or even do the bare minimum to spare her all the effort of all the heavy lifting around the house, knowing that she had issues with her back. So I got pretty annoyed, and that night I decided to do something I knew would annoy him as well. Without his knowledge, while everyone was busy, I decided to set an alarm in his room for 4 a.m. Just to be clear, my mother-in-law doesn't need an alarm clock, since she sleeps on the side of the bed, which is close to the window. So she just tends to keep the curtain just a sliver open so that the light can come in and she can wake up with the sun. She had told me that during the first few years of her marriage she needed an alarm clock to wake up on time because even she was not used to this kind of thing before that. But my father-in-law was not happy about it because it used to wake him up as well and it cut into his hours of sleep. So she had to learn this new way, and you guys can imagine how ridiculous it was for me to hear something like that. But she thought it was a very funny story. Anyway, I knew how entitled my father-in-law was, so I decided to set an alarm. And naturally, the next morning around 4, I could hear him yelling in the other room because he thought that it was my mother-in-law who had set the alarm, and they were having an argument. I was quite sleepy myself, but I knew that I was not going to let my mother-in-law take the fall for this, so I woke up my husband for moral support and went with him to knock on their door. Took them a couple of minutes, but they finally opened the door and my father-in-law looked very upset to have been woken up at this time. However, since we were all up at 4, including my mother-in-law, who was actually the only one who looked wide awake and ready for the day, I said what I had to say. I told my mother-in-law that I was ready to help her out with all the household chores and everything, and then I looked towards my father-in-law and my husband and told them that now, since the women of the house were going to do all the work around the house, we expected them to pull their weight as well. We wanted them to go out and hunt and fish and gather or whatever it is that they had to do, and then they could come back home and we could get started with our day. I remember my father-in-law had said that good wives wake up early for the day to keep the household in order. So I used that same line and told him and my husband that good husbands also have to wake up early and do their share of the work in order to keep the household running. My mother-in-law and my husband looked a bit confused for a couple of minutes, but then they burst out laughing, and so did I, because I thought whatever I had done was hilarious, and in spite of our differences of opinion, I thought this would be the most apt way to deal with my father-in-law. It was a bit cheeky, I'll give you that, but I don't think that it was actually disrespectful or harmful. But I guess my father-in-law did not think of the situation that way, and he looked pretty livid when I said that. When his wife and his son started laughing, he appeared to be even more angry. He just slammed the door shut in my face. It took me by surprise for a couple of seconds, but it was 4 a.m, and I didn't want to get into any sort of drama at that point in time, so I decided to go back into my room with my husband, and after we had a short chuckle about the whole thing, both of us went back to sleep. Then, when we finally woke up at our usual time at 8, we decided to go out into the living room and take stock of the situation. My mother-in-law was doing her work as usual. My father-in-law was just sitting on the couch, but both of them looked pretty grim. My mother-in-law was not laughing anymore like she was in the morning, so I knew that something had definitely gone wrong, but I tried to pretend everything was fine and went about my day as usual. For a while, nobody said anything, and my husband and I did whatever we usually do, but just as we were about to leave for work, After breakfast, my father-in-law decided to speak up finally, probably choosing the time on purpose to make it as inconvenient for us as possible, or maybe just to make sure that we wouldn't fight back too much since that would delay us for work. But he didn't know that he was already on thin ice with me. Anyway, he started off by telling us he had tried his very best to understand us and our lifestyle. He had tried to respect whatever we had chosen for ourselves, because at the end of the day, even if we did not agree with that, we were grown adults. We had the right to live our lives the way we wanted to. He started to say that he had always allowed us to do whatever we wanted, even if it went against his beliefs. And he referred to the fact that we had chosen not to have children, and on top of that, we had also chosen to ignore our duties, saying that I was not a good wife because I never cooked for him and let him do all that, whereas he was not a good husband because he never knew how to assert himself. I thought that it was a ridiculous thing to say. And I was about to interrupt him, but he stopped me and he said that our behavior had come to an end now because he could not keep tolerating this anymore, especially under his roof. He started to tell me that I was disrespecting his traditions, his beliefs. He was not going to have this. So as long as I was living under his roof, I had to live according to his terms. And that was it for me. I had already been tolerating enough. I couldn't keep it back anymore. And even though my husband and I are really not very confrontational, we had to speak up at that point. We told him we were going to leave immediately, that we were not interested in staying with him anymore, and he was actually the one who had insisted that we come and stay with them. But because we know how they behave, we had been perfectly fine with staying in a hotel. I told him that I was not going to live according to his terms, that I was not going to let anybody mistreat me. I was going to live my life the way I wanted to, and he was not going to be able to stop me from doing that. I also told him that his son was a much better husband and human being than he would ever be, and he had no right to be lecturing us like this. Obviously, my mother-in-law tried to intervene and calm things down, but it had all escalated, and eventually it ended up with us going out with our bags, and both of us took a day off from work to find a hotel because we were fuming, and we had no intention of going back to my in-laws' place anymore. In the end, my father-in-law had said that I was the one responsible for brainwashing his son and trying to emasculate him and make him into a girl, which was pretty much the kind of thing I expected him to say because he was so idiotic. Anyway, for the past couple of days, we have been staying in a hotel and we have no contact with his father. But his mother has been begging us to come back home, sort things out with his father, for her sake, if not for his. She has said that she really wants him to stay in touch with her, and she doesn't want to lose either of us. But if he's not on good terms with his father, she doesn't see that working out because she's not going to betray her husband. So that's why she desperately wants us to sort things out with her husband. And I know for a fact that by sorting things out, she means we need to apologize to him. And I just can't see that happening. Now my husband and I are in a dilemma about what to do because on one hand, we don't want to abandon his mom because she's actually a lot more tolerable and nicer than his father. But on the other hand, she has made it very clear that if we don't sort things out with her husband, then she won't be able to have a relationship with us. And I mean, there's only so much that we can do for people. At the end of the day, they have to come to certain conclusions on their own as well. They have to realize that things cannot always work out on their terms. I just don't know what to say anymore. I'm just so confused about all this. WIBTA if my husband and I chose not to repair things with his father, even if it meant losing our relationship with his mother as well. Update 1. Okay, I have gone through all the comments and I have spoken to my parents about it as well. And everybody believes that we are in the right here and we don't have to worry about what we're doing. So that's pretty reassuring because given the situation, we have been rethinking everything that we had done so far. However, I think we have tolerated enough. And my husband and I have put up with enough of my father-in-law's nonsensical behavior. I cannot do this anymore, and I think we have done enough for our mother-in-law as well. If she cannot see for herself that whatever's happening is not good for her, then how much can we possibly do for her? So far, and even now, every time that she has tried to speak to us, we have been trying to convince her that my father-in-law's behavior was completely unacceptable towards me. And that's why we do not think we owe him an apology. And we know for a fact that given the kind of person he is, he's not going to accept us back into the family unless we apologize. He has a huge ego, and if he really wants to sort things out with us, he's going to have to make the first move here, because we're not going to satisfy his ego and go crawling back to him. That's just not going to happen after everything that had been said and done that day. And we have been trying to explain that to her, but she keeps insisting that we're going to have to be the ones to be the bigger person, which doesn't even make sense, because I think so far we have tried to do exactly that, and it hasn't worked well. So now I have left it to my husband to decide what he wants to do, because at the end of the day, these are his parents, and he can choose what he wants to do. I don't want to get involved anymore because this is just messing with my head. I know it's messing with his head too, and I'm trying my best to be there for him. But apart from that, I'm not going to continue trying to explain things to my mother-in-law anymore, because every time we try to do that, it just goes nowhere. We end up having the same conversation over and over again. We keep talking in circles, and in the end, nothing ever changes. It's just way too frustrating for me to deal with right now. So I'm choosing to distance myself from the situation at this point. I just can't see any other way to get out of it, to be very honest. And I know it's going to be difficult, but if it comes down to it, I think my husband will have to do the same. Thankfully, he has me. And I know that I will do everything in my power to keep him from feeling guilty, because I know that none of this is his fault. Update 2. So it's been a week since my last update, and well, my husband had to make the very difficult decision of choosing to let his mother cut him off now. Until recently, he had been having the same argument with her. He had been telling her that this time he could not just stay silent and avoid confrontation because whatever had happened was not acceptable, and his father would have to apologize if he wanted to have a relationship with us anymore. He had made it very clear he did not want, and neither did he have, any intention of apologizing to his father in the future. But he still wanted to have a relationship with his mother. And yes, she would have to go against her husband for that. But that shouldn't be so hard of a choice to make for her. And instead of trying to make everything convenient for her husband, she should try to think about things from his perspective as well. She had refused to understand this very simple thing, and instead she had started trying to make him feel guilty, saying she was feeling like she was being torn apart between her husband and himself. And she kept saying that they were making everything so much more difficult for her than it had to be, saying that it was his ego and her husband's unforgiving nature that was going to be the end of her. Basically, she was trying to make it seem like she was mad at her husband, but at the end of the day, she still wanted him to be in a position of power. And that's why she wanted her son to apologize, because otherwise she would have convinced him to apologize instead, because even she knows what should happen. Anyway, eventually I think it got too much for my husband to take, and so he decided to stop trying, and since then, for the past couple of days, she has not been calling either, so I guess this is over now. It's sad, but well, this had to happen at some point. It couldn't have gone on indefinitely. He is pretty upset, I can tell, but I'm trying my best to keep him cheered up and distracted. And I just hope that we are able to come out of this bad phase soon enough. Fingers crossed. Update 3. Hey, so it's been a month since my last update, and we are finally back in our own home, so that's a relief. And like I had said, my husband had chosen to cut his mother out of his life because he couldn't see any other way out of this situation. other than that, because clearly she was not ready to hear the truth and respect our choices. So we had to let her go. And since then, we have not heard from her or his father. But the rest of the family has told us that they have been telling everybody that they have chosen to disown the two of us because we're extremely disrespectful and our lifestyle is quite deviant from what they believe in. So do with that what you will. I can't say that I'm surprised, but honestly, the fact that they're talking badly about us to everybody else is just so disheartening, since I had expected slightly better. That was my bad, though. I shouldn't have. Anyway, it doesn't matter because my husband's doing much better now emotionally. He doesn't seem to care that much anymore, and neither do I. We are in a much better place, and now that we don't have to walk on tiptoe around these people anymore, now that we don't have to constantly avoid confrontation, I feel like it's quite a relief. And I think we did the right thing. So I don't have any regrets about our actions. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.